Hello there, I'm Tillian, and I've been making video games for a while now. I've gained lots of experience, and I'm now putting it to use in this next generation, super advanced series of games that looks like this. Trust me, it'll look a lot better once I add the fog. Perfect. But anyway, I've been working on a series of short horror games using the PSX aesthetic that has gained a lot of popularity in the past few years. The game is called Horror Cartridge Collection, and if the name doesn't give it away, each short game will be presented in the form of a cartridge you can play. You're currently looking at footage from the first 3 cartridges, which you can play for free now on itch.io. Out of Gas, Nightmare, and The Mine. I want each game in the collection to have something unique to it, along with different methods of giving players that horror experience. And whilst all the current games are first person, I will definitely be experimenting with other perspectives, some familiar, others not so much. This Devlog series is going to be following the development of the 4th cartridge that will be in the paid version of the game that I'm going to be releasing on Steam. And that cartridge is... Checking In. A first person game set in a hotel. It's the 70s and you've just escaped the pouring rain outside. You check into the hotel, go to your room, and strange things start to happen in the hotel. For this cartridge I want a deeper focus on the story with more to uncover, along with someone to actually talk to. First, let's talk about the game's aesthetic. You may be aware of the surge of PS1 styled video games that have been released over the past few years. It's a fairly simple style, invokes a lot of nostalgia, and it can look very creepy when done well. Many people talk about the accuracy of effects and how much something looks like a PS1 game. Well, I'm going to say right now that I'm ignoring a lot of that. Whilst the limitations of the PS1 added a lot to the style, it also had parts that just made things suck. I love this low poly pixelated art style, but it gets bogged down in a bunch of stuff, so whilst I could spend a lot of time trying to make stuff fully accurate to the PS1, I'd rather spend that time making it look better and play better. There are also some things that will just make development much harder, such as the lack of dynamic lighting. Many PS1 games try to imitate dynamic lighting using vertex shading. A good example of this is the flashlight in Silent Hill. Whilst it looks cool, it's very limited in what it can do, and because of that I decided to stick with full next generation Unreal 5 lighting. That way I can do stuff like this. I'm going for a mix of PS1, N64, early 3D PC, and Nintendo DS, combining parts of them all together to create this kind of style, so whilst it's not actually faithful to a PS1 game, it will have the same general look. So with that out of the way, before anyone starts leaving comments on how the PS1 does not actually support games created in Unreal 5, let's talk about the actual building of the environment for this cartridge. So for an environment this large, it's much simpler and faster to create a set of modular assets, and since hotel hallways have very little deviation, it's quite easy to make a single hallway and reuse it. First, I gather lots of reference images of hotel hallways. From this I can choose the elements that I like and want to put into my own design. Using a set of walls, floors, door frames and other meshes that I've created previously, I can start to block out the hallway using grid snapping. Once I have an idea of what I want it to look like, next comes texture creation. I've been working on my pipeline for a while now to improve it, but here's the basic process. I'm using a texture resolution of 128 by 128 for most of the environment in this cartridge so that I can have an increased level of detail within the textures. Using online sources like textures.com, I get a bunch of photos that will work with the creation of the textures. I use Sprite for most of my texture work as the program is made for pixel art and comes with useful tools to help in the creation process. I also use Affinity Photo for some more advanced editing that Sprite does not support. I work with each image and extract the texture I want from them, clean up any major problems and add the details I want. Scaling down an image this much means that a lot of the detail is lost, but with some work I can put parts of it back in and highlight the important parts of the texture. Once the texture is at a good stage, I can export it and see how it looks inside Blender and Unreal. Sprite has scripting support, and thanks to other people doing most of the work and me making a few sloppy changes, I can export everything into separate textures with a single click of a button. From there, Unreal automatically imports the textures, and again I can just click a single button to turn the texture into a material that I can drag onto objects in the scene. I make adjustments as I go to get the colour and details looking good. Some parts such as shadows are baked into the texture to help give it depth, such as this shadow above the wood panel, helping to give the illusion that the wood sticks out past the plaster wall. I create a couple variants for different parts of the scene and drop the textures into the game world. With this simple hallway finished, I can begin blocking out other sections and start creating props. Something that most hotels have is a reception desk, so I'll make one of those now. Like the environment, work on other assets requires reference material, so I gather images of hotel reception desks and then pull them together to work out the core idea I want. I really like this design of having the reception desk slotted into the corner with an L shape, but I'm not too fond of the actual design, so I'm going to look for a better one in the reference images. I like this design of the simple material with a gold frame, so I'll put these together and build a basic model in Blender. Since there's only going to be one reception desk in this cartridge, and I know what the shape will be, I don't need to work on a modular design for the reception desk. It's important to have a good reference scale for the meshes in your game. You don't want things to be too small or too big. That's why the use of a reference mesh is important. One of the simplest is a human base model. It gives you a great idea of the scale, and you can relate it to the real life scale of objects you will understand in the real world. I create a bunch of assets and place them around the map to help build it up. Extras like these cracked textures can be thrown on the walls to break up repetition and add extra detail. Creating the elevator was simple enough. A few textures thrown together gives it a good look. The buttons actually use a floating plane for the numbers, with everything being in a single texture. I have a system set up using gameplay tags in Unreal that allows me to quickly connect objects together and have interactions between them. Using this, I can set buttons to tell the elevator doors to open and close and go to each floor. As far as actually moving the elevator, well, that's a lie. Whilst I could have the elevator actually move up and down, this creates a problem with the player's movement, and you can easily create a whole host of other problems, so it's easier to instead just teleport the player up and down to give the illusion that the elevator is moving. Whilst it is currently placeholder, the hotel will have a receptionist who you first talk to upon entering the hotel. I'm using a free plugin called Dialog System X created by 6 Lane Studios. I've made some changes to it to more resemble the dialogue system from Paratopic, another sharp PSX style horror game. The ability to move around and talk is something that I quite like, and I feel that it adds a lot to the immersion of the game. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and are excited to see more from these cartridges and play them when they release. Like and subscribe to help more people see this video, wishlist the game on Steam and go play on itch.io. Thanks for visiting, come back soon.